Welcome back to Open Line. I am with Robin Kimbrough, a local attorney, also with the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. Our lines are open to hear from you tonight. 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. If you've been a victim, we'd be honored to hear your story if you would like to share it. Also, if you have any questions about how to get out of an abusive relationship, Robin's here to help you out tonight. We are certainly here to offer some tips, but let's talk about this power and control. You say it's what domestic violence is all about when you boil it down.
Domestic violence, again, is about power and control, and it's about safety for the victim and accountability for the batterer. One thing that we have to understand, that violence occurs in cycles. So you may have an incident. It may be a bad cussing out, or it may be a physical assault. Then there's a de-escalation phase where the batterer is sorry. I'm sorry that I did this to you. So the victim, instead of leaving, stays because she still loves her batterer.
Sure.
And then there may be this eggshell period where the batterer is starting to engage in more violent behavior, about to go into another incident. This cycle can happen over a year, or it can happen in minutes. It just depends on how much the batterer feels he needs to take control over a situation. One thing I want to make clear, and the power and control wheel does, and I think you'll have one on your screen, is that domestic violence is not just physical violence, but domestic violence includes threats and intimidation. It also includes comments like, "You're crazy, nobody will believe you, nobody wants you, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough," all sorts of insults that may touch at the vulnerabilities of the victim.
Tears you down piece by piece.
And that is the purpose of domestic violence. And you'll find that when a victim comes out of this situation and they're on their way to being a survivor, they will say, "I'm back to myself. I have found myself again." One component of this power and control wheel I want to point out is the isolation. So what some batterers will do, they will say, "It's either me or your family," and they will take the person away from any type of support systems. But the batterer will also be as kind in public. Let's say at the church, the batterer is the deacon. The batterer is always at church, working hard in the church. And then the victim feels uncomfortable about sharing the abuse she's experiencing at home.
Because everyone thinks so highly of this person. How could he ever do that?
It's isolation.
Yeah.
So other women in the church are saying, "Oh, I wish he were my husband." But in fact, behind closed doors, this woman is being beaten. So that is another form of isolation. I want to point out the economic abuse. You're not allowed to work. You need to bring home all your money to me, or I'm just going to give you a certain amount of money to live off per week. So all of those are examples of economic control. This last week we did a training on interfaith intersections with domestic violence, and we talked to faith-based persons about the use of spiritual abuse, misinterpretation of scripture, sacred scriptures, to hold victims in relationships based upon their faith, or justifying the abuse based upon misinterpretation of scripture, saying, "I'm superior, you're supposed to obey me, I have a right to take advantage of you in this way." And so we have faith leaders who counsel couples together, or who say, "Oh, go home and pray about it." And when this person's in a very violent relationship, it's so important that we not counsel couples together because of the power and control.
Makes
there.
total sense.
The victim is afraid to tell you that I'm being beaten, because I'm afraid of the ramifications at home.
What goes home? Yeah, when we go home, what's going to happen?
And this is just not true for clergy, but it's true for medical providers. We are seeing more hospitals today, and the local hospitals here in Nashville do screening of domestic violence. So when victims come in with certain injuries, medical providers are able to ask certain questions so they can get them the resources that they need to help. They're not required to report it to the police, but they are in a position to offer resources available to help them to get the support and advocacy they need to leave bad relationships.
So very vital. We have Deborah on the line who I would like to talk to. Deborah, thank you for being with us tonight on Open Line. What would you like to share?
I have been in situations of this domestic violence through 3 marriages.
I'm sorry to hear that. Were you able to leave the relationships?
Pardon?
Were you able to leave these relationships?
Yes, you have to kind of just judge it, have the kids' stuff ready to, throw it in the bag, get in the car, and then you follow them out and you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise, they're going to find a way to make you stop.
And in fact, I know...
I think it's got to be, you don't have to have money in your pocket. You shouldn't have to have money in your pocket to leave that situation.
Mm-hmm. She raises a very good point.
He can't.
Yes.
Don't worry, if you're pregnant, there's still ways to protect you.
Yeah.
And the ways they, he'll tell you, oh, that ain't my kid anyway, you're going around. All kinds of stuff. It's the way our boys are raised. They see this. They see these things. It goes back generation to generation.
Sure it does.
Right on through school. The girls are initiated in high school. The boyfriends beat them, rape them, you name it. And next thing you know, they're married. They're doing it, You got to teach them, oh, you made your bed and you got to lay in it. You can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, you bring up so many good points when it comes to teen violence and teen dating. It can start that early, and a lot of girls and boys don't know what this looks like. They don't know that they're involved in domestic violence.
That's why I'm excited about working with the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, because we have been working over the years on changing social norms among teens to get them talking about domestic violence. So that we do this in terms of prevention. What can we do to educate boys and girls on this issue of domestic violence? I want to encourage parents to have their teens to go to tnblue.org. It is a fantastic website by the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence to help teens to talk about what a healthy relationship looks like, what mutual relationships look like, and what abusive relationships look like. So we have posters, interactive tests on there to help young people to learn more about domestic and sexual violence.
What was that website again?
tnblue.org.
Okay, so like Tennessee, tnblue.org.
And it is an awesome resource.
And it's so important when you think about it, because if a young boy or girl's in a relationship and it's their first or second relationship and domestic violence is part of it, then that just is what their norm is. That's what they know. And so they're more likely to keep repeating, because that's what they know.
Right. So domestic violence is learned behavior. We see it on television, we see it in our homes, and so sometimes these behaviors are repeated. But it can also be unlearned. Yeah. And so this is why we have wonderful programs like the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence to help do some preventative work. We also are doing work on college campuses. So we have some funding for the Department of Health that enables us to do some wonderful awareness on campus about sexual assault.
Wonderful. I do believe we also have, is it Paul, Courtney? Is it Paul on the line? Okay. Paul, thank you for being with us tonight. I hear you have a story to share with us.
Yeah, I just was going to explain. I was one of the 15% of the actual men that are through a domestic situation. I was in a violent relationship, marriage that actually I'm 100% disabled. I had to leave my home. I went to family services to get an order of protection, and it was actually in Rutherford County, and I showed them the proof and video, which they immediately granted the order of protection, but they wouldn't serve it. So I was living on my vehicle for 7 days. On the 8th day, I actually went to Rutherford County Sheriff's Department and told them I was just going to sleep in their lobby till they served it, which, of course, that evening they did serve it. And it's just, my point is the seriousness. There is the seriousness of a man being in a domestic situation is not taken as serious. And I understand with 85% of the women that are being abused, it's kind of hard to be taken serious as a man.
Paul, was it hard for you to come forward and say, this is happening to me, I'm a man and I am being abused? I imagine that's part of it.
It actually went on for well over 2 years, and it got to the point to where I was being denied medication. My health was deteriorating, and as well as food. So, I mean, I had to go, and immediately Family Services had to present it to their judge, which he immediately okayed it, and I couldn't get the sheriff's department to go and serve this order of protection.
Paul, how are you doing now?
I'm sorry?
How are you doing now?
I'm not doing very well at all. I'm just going through the divorce. They actually put the divorce in with the order of protection on the same hearing, which the judge in Rutherford County made a real big joke of it, and actually I was told to either lock myself in my bedroom or stay locked in my garage, because I was actually sleeping in my garage for a few days, and just kind of made a big joke of it. So really, it's just disappointing, because I know that if I was, let's say, the 85% of the population in the domestic situation, it would have turned out a lot different, and that's not taking anything away from the ladies, you know, because I've always thought, oh, a man can't be, you know, in a violent situation. Sure. Ain't no way, you know. I've always thought of it that way, but being 100% disabled and, you know, denied medication, you know, it can happen, and sure. It did happen, and it's still not over yet. It's just, it's really discouraging that, you know, that Tennessee, the law in Tennessee can be, you know.
Well, let me ask Robin about this. Paul, hang on just for a second here. Any thoughts when this, what comes to your mind? What does he need to do?
Well, for one thing, he has a local program he can call, the Domestic Violence Program in Rutherford County, and they help victims of domestic violence, whether they're male or female. So all programs are accessible regardless of your gender orientation. Second, it is difficult for men to come forward, sure. just as you pointed out, because I think that because of social norms, men may feel ashamed on another level than a woman that going forward is saying that my wife or intimate female partner is beating me. Number three, I want to reiterate that domestic violence happens in heterosexual relationships and same-sex relationships. I want to reiterate that. But I do also want to add that the caller's experience is no different than many women experience in the court systems across Tennessee.
I hate to hear that.
And this is why it's so important that we've got to educate everyone on this issue. If I could do it, I'd ride a horse around Tennessee and teach everyone from the teacher to the judge about how important this issue is. So I think also this is a call to attorneys to volunteer and to represent some of these victims. Just as the previous caller had indicated, it is a financial cost at times to get out of these situations. But if you have suffered with economic abuse, it's very difficult to hire an attorney to defend custody of your kids, to get money to go somewhere else to live. And so we have to reserve judgment when we say, why don't victims leave? It is hard for them to leave.
So many times, I mean, up to 10 times. I forget the statistic. I've heard it many years ago.
It takes about 4 to 5 times for a victim to leave.
Successfully, to actually get out and stay out.
Well, I have a friend of mine, he calls it the rule of 7, that it takes 7 touches with the judicial system before the victim decides to leave the relationship. It's about 5 times of occurrence of domestic violence before there is a report made to a system person or an authority.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the phone lines are lit up. Much more to come, including what you can do, how you get that order of protection. So stay with us. Some very important information coming up.